wanted to talk a bit about history, because of course the fight against racism has been going on for a long time, and we need to learn the lessons of the people who have come before us. The protests that we've seen in recent weeks sweeping Britain bring to mind, for me, the black and anti-racist movements of the 1970s and the 1980s. Those movements took action to defend people physically against fascists and racists, because we know we cannot rely on the police to defend us from these individual racists. And once again, that is happening right now. In London, in Newcastle, in Glasgow, in recent weeks, there have been violent attacks by fascists, by loyalists against Black Lives Matter protests, and the police have facilitated those attacks. Those movements in the 70s and the 80s, they also defended people against the police, against frame-ups, against smear campaigns. They made common cause with liberation struggles, fighting imperialism in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America. And we continue that tradition today in our solidarity with the people of Palestine and their struggle. Those radical black movements in the 70s and 80s, they weren't only fighting for their own interests, they also provided a lead to hundreds of thousands of other working class people suffering under this brutal, exploitative capitalist system. And they set up organisations like the Race Today Collective, like the Asian Youth Movements. I'm proud to say that our own organisation was part of that movement as well, and it played a major role in forming the standpoint that is represented by our newspaper, Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. And those movements in the 70s and the 80s also knew who were their real friends and who were their enemies. So when Tony Benn, loved by the Labour left, got up on a platform at the Campaign Against Racist Laws demonstration in 1979. He was rightly denounced for the Labour government's complicity with state racism, their operation of police racism, their implementation of racist police laws. And we need to know today who are our real friends and to call out those false friends of the movement. We also need to know and remember how those movements were destroyed, because those movements and their demands have still need to be fought for today. They have still not been realised. Those movements were defeated primarily by a combination of what we called at the time the big stick of police repression and the rotten carrot of community relations. While they kept the majority of black and racialised minority people in an oppressed position, in order to diffuse the anger of that movement, they allowed a few people to move into more comfortable middle-class positions. They gave community projects funding on the condition that they would stop being political, that they would stop actually fighting racism. But all that settlement has been blown away in the last few years, because the capitalist system is in crisis, and as a consequence we have seen funding for BME voluntary sector organisations decimated. We have seen people's aspirations frustrated. We have seen many of those better paid jobs that black people had in the public sector, in the voluntary sector, completely destroyed. The only way to fight racism in Britain today is through a collective struggle for liberation, by making common cause with people fighting for their liberation in other countries and those suffering under capitalism here in Britain. We need to be realistic about what's coming down the road right now. We've already got more than 3 million people unemployed in this country, and that's just according to the official statistics. We know in reality it's more. We've got thousands of renters with arrears mounting up who are going to be facing eviction. We've got more job losses coming as furlough is ended. People are going to be forced to fight back. And when people start to fight back, they will need to find allies. They will need to find an understanding of the roots of their oppression. And out of that movement, we can build people's power to replace the power of capital. Thank you.